The world is full of this vast amount of information that people tend to ignore and prefer to just make mistakes. And my view was, why would I make mistakes that I can avoid if I can learn and study and have a much higher probability of success with each decision I make? So I have a wife and 4 kids, so there's not a lot of time to sit down and physically read books and flip pages, but I have lots of audio content time. So I probably listen 45 minutes to an hour a day on something that has to do with one of my passions and interests. And you can just learn an incredible amount of stuff when you spend every kind of waking hour being a kind of a continual, constant learner.
No one wants to talk about how in a 5-year time period, I only took 11 days vacation. Now, you and I both know we live in a society now where people take 11 days vacation in the first quarter of the year.
Right.
I would come home from school and I'd ask my mother, are we gonna eat dinner? She would say no. That hurts because there was nothing I can do. You saying no, you won't do business with me? Whatever, I'll call someone else. Every morning I get up at 4 a.m. I'm human. There's days I want to stay in bed, I want to hit snooze, especially if my wife's snoring. I want to stay there. But then I say to myself, okay, there's someone out there right now with cancer in a hospital that's never going to leave that hospital. They would give anything just to walk to the restroom on their own. Forget about leaving the hospital, just to walk to the restroom. And I have the ultimate gift and privilege to be able to get out of bed and go achieve my dreams and goals. So I jump out of bed and I go for it.
Money Revealed is an exclusive video series where self-made millionaires share their secrets on how they got rich. In this episode, you'll learn how to become a learning machine, turn your vision into a reality, and stop being a victim. These are the lessons that they don't teach you in school about making money. And we've partnered with the series creator Jeff Hayes to bring it to you on my YouTube channel. Enjoy.
I wasn't sure exactly what to expect when I got on a plane and went to Jackson, Mississippi to have a conversation with Joel Bomgar. And I have to tell you, he about blew me out of the room. This man's energy and intellect is something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. It's amazing what he's achieved in his life, but not only has he had personal achievement, his ability to communicate and motivate you and give you wisdom that you can use in your own life is pretty spectacular. Enjoy this interview with Joel Bomgar. Joel, thanks so much for your time today. Looking forward to this conversation. Tell us about your background.
So I grew up here in Mississippi. I was homeschooled all the way through, joined the Mississippi Air National Guard. So I served in the military for 6 years, 1 year full-time, came back, attended Belhaven University here in Jackson. And my wife and I met as freshmen, got married as juniors. And so then graduated in 2003, and I started my business, Bomgar Corporation, about a month after I graduated, and built that company for 11 years.
Wow. So how did you have the courage or inclination to start a business on your own 1 month after you graduated?
So I think a lot of it's the beauty of ignorance. You have no idea how hard it's going to be. Like most things I've done in my life, I've looked back on them and said, that was incredible, but I don't want to do it again, and I don't know that I would have done it had I known how hard it was going to be at the beginning. Right. So I think it was just this raw entrepreneurial spirit that there's a problem in the world, that's not okay. I'm going to go solve that problem, and it's going to require building a business to solve that problem. It's going to be a big deal.
So what did Bomgar do? What was the problem you were solving?
Yeah, so initially, right out of college, I made money fixing people's computer problems. So I drove this 1979 Buick LeSabre, which was a year older than I was. I was born in 1980. So I was driving this $500 car around fixing people's computer problems. And I would get on their computers and fix it. And the problem I had was that drive time was not billable. And of course, I didn't want to be driving a 1979 Buick LeSabre around. And so I had this idea, which was, what if I could log into people's computer systems over the internet, and then I could see their screen, I could type on their keyboard, I could do everything remotely that I could do if I was physically there. Back in 2003, that was very new technology. Now it's almost universal. But back then it was very new. And so I spent my senior year developing this little piece of software for me to use. I never actually intended to build a business around it, but I was building a tool for me, and it took about 6 months of my senior year, and I thought, that was way too much work for me to be the only person that gets to benefit from this tool.
Right.
I wonder if there's a market for it. So I put up a very simple one-page website. It literally had nothing on it, no links. It was just a one-page brochure online that said, for $500, I'll share this technology I built with you, and then you can fix computer problems over the internet like me. And I started advertising on Google, the little Google-sponsored AdWords, which back then cost about 10 cents per click. Depending on the term, now they're a lot more expensive. But every time somebody clicked on my link, they'd go to my website, and I think I set a limit of like $20 a day, because my wife and I had just got married, and so money was tight. And so day 4, I put my ads live on a Monday. On a Thursday, the very first person called me and said, I want this technology, here's $500, you proved to me it works. I showed him it worked and all that. And the business was born right there.
Wow.
And over the next 2.5 months, I made $25,000, which was enough to hire 2 full-time employees. By the end of the full year, we had more than more than $100,000 in revenue, and it just got building and building and building, and millions of dollars started flowing in, and we kept building and building and building. And now Bomgar Corporation, 15 years later, is more than $100 million in annual revenue and incredibly profitable, and the #1 provider worldwide of technical support software for large businesses.
Did you have business training in school? Did you take business courses? Or how did you figure out how to start and grow a company?
Sure. So I was a business major, but really they don't teach you most of what you need to know to start a business, because a business degree anticipates that you'll start on some management track with some large company.
Right.
They don't anticipate you'll graduate and start a business the next day. So I had some business background, but a lot of it was reading and studying. And I met with every entrepreneurial person I could find, bought them lunch. We talked for an hour and a half. I'd learn what I could. I also found there's a book, The Art of the Start 2.0 by Guy Kawasaki that I thought was incredibly helpful in the start of Bomgar Corporation. But a lot of it was just, we were learning, and it was reading books, studying, searching on the internet, and talking to wise, smart people and figuring it out as we went.
And that's an interesting point of view, is saying that the resources are available outside of academia to be able to get this. So how much of your time did you then, and how much now do you spend reading, researching, studying, these ways?
So a lot. I am a big reader, but mostly in the form of audiobooks. So I've got, I bought 300 some books on audible.com and not read all of them, but a large percentage. So I love audible.com. I love podcasts. And for any sort of written content, I use an app called Voice Dream, which transforms the text into computerized spoken word. So I have a wife and 4 kids, so there's not a lot of time to sit down and physically read books and flip pages, but I have lots of audio content time. So I probably listen 45 minutes to an hour a day on something that has to do with one of my passions and interests. And you can just learn an incredible amount of stuff when you spend every kind of waking hour being a kind of a continual, constant learner.
Well, this is interesting. So you seem to learn, there's different people who say visual learner, audio learner, et cetera. You're an audio learner, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And how did you figure that out? Because if you were to try to read all these books, it probably wouldn't have been as efficient for you.
Yeah, so first of all, I started reading, but there's just not enough hours in the day. And so I quickly learned that I could digest information faster and more efficiently in audio content, and that it allowed me to assimilate information much faster and more efficiently. And I also there's just not enough hours in the day to talk to people. And so if some of the smartest people in the world have put 8, 10, 12 hours of their best thoughts in a physical book for you,
right,
or on audible.com, why would you go to lunch with them if you can't first learn 12 hours of their best content and then ask for them to go to lunch to fill in the cracks? Right. So the world is full of this vast amount of information that people tend to ignore and prefer to just make mistakes. And my view was, why would I make mistakes that I can avoid if I can learn and study and have a much higher probability of success with each decision I make?
Are these basically virtual mentors in a sense that even people that you've never met, but they, like you said, they've been able to put their thoughts and ideas in assimilated form so that you can digest them? Because there's many people who say, hey, I've been in one career track for a long time. I really have this passion. I want to do this other thing. I don't know exactly how to get started, what have you. And they don't have a role model maybe in their life, but they can go out and find one.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And throughout my life, I've had different interests and different passions, and each one starts with, and immediately I jump on Audible, see if there's any books on the topic. I jump on the podcast or the Overcast app and see if there's any podcasts on the issue. Then I jump online. I start filling VoiceStream with various articles online. Wikipedia is tons of good information. And so each new thing I've done in life have started by trying to front load the intellectual investment. And people tend not to do that. They tend to kind of rush into things and then they make a lot of mistakes. And to me, if I can front load that intellectual investment, the probability of being accurate is a lot higher. And I've encountered just some incredible people. For example, Al Ries, last name R-I-E-S, Al Ries, has written just incredible books on marketing and focus and business. And after I had read almost every book he had, I actually called him up one day, and he offered to come in and do consulting for Bomgar Corporation. It was some of the most helpful consulting we ever had.
Wow.
But I found him because he had been a virtual mentor to me through his books, and then I couldn't believe that we had the opportunity to actually hire him to help us apply his principles to our unique situation.
Wow. And were there milestones that you can cite along the way saying, okay, so there's the startup, and that was I think one milestone you said, hey, we made $25,000 in some period of time, we were able to hire some people. What other milestones were there along the way?
Sure. So one of the big ones was raising outside capital. We raised, after the first full year in operation, we had about $1 million in revenue, and we decided we wanted to grow faster than even that revenue would allow. So we raised $1 million in outside capital from local investors. Initially, we talked to venture capitalists and angel investors, and ultimately found 2 local investors that were willing to put up $1 million. And then over the course of 4 years, they put a total of $20 million into the company.
Wow.
In exchange for stock. So they became significant shareholders in the company, and that gave us an extra $20 million to really build the company in an incredible way. So that was a big pivot point. Also, Al Ries, who I mentioned earlier, he came in and did consulting, and one of the best books that's ever been written on the topic is a book he wrote called Focus. And that was really where we realized that we as a business, even though we had only been in business 18 months, were trying to do too much.
Right.
And that to be successful, we needed to do something that we could be the best in the world at, that we were deeply passionate about, and that drove our economic engine, which goes back to principles in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is another just incredible book. So with that, we realized that a lot of the ways we had started to diversify made no sense for the stage of the company we were at.
Right.
Not that they wouldn't make sense ever, but you can't have more products than you have employees. So we decided to really laser focus on computer technical support software for large businesses, deployed in a unique way, licensed in a unique way. And that's ultimately what enabled us to become #1 in the world in that industry.
Interesting. So when you say, okay, you're a year in, you're going out to raise outside capital, was it something you learned, or was it your own instinct that said, there's a time for this, it's time for this particular stage of it? Because again, a new entrepreneur that started a business a month out of college normally doesn't have the understanding that outside capital needs to come into a company to grow it or scale it at a certain rate. So how did you come to the conclusion to do that, and how did you figure out how to attract that capital?
Sure. So a couple things. One, meeting with a lot of local people here, meeting with people who had done it before, and they would ask questions like, have you raised outside capital? Which would trigger follow-on questions like, no, and why would you, and what would you use it for, and how does that look like, and what do they get in return, and how does that... So we learned that way. Also, The Art of the Start 2.0, the book I mentioned, with Guy Kawasaki, great framework for why do you raise, how do you raise, how long do you bootstrap, and all of that. But a lot of it was just talking to local people who, the more we talked, the more the animal of how this looked became more and more clear, and it became clear that, wow, if we had more money than we have coming in off the product, we could actually grow this thing significantly faster, and that would be great. And so that ultimately that came together. But it was with this kind of endless curiosity of always asking and always thirsting for what's the next step, and how does it look, and what do partnerships look like, and what does capital look like, and always just peeling back the onion, looking for what's inside, that led us to each of the steps that we ultimately took.
What were your strengths that allow you? Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, right? So you build on your strengths. What were your strengths that allowed this company to thrive in the way it did?
So I love this journey of intellectual discovery whenever I'm doing something, of starting from scratch and there's just learning and learning and learning, trying to be, whatever I'm doing, just trying to be the absolute best at whatever that is. So I wanted to be the best entrepreneur in the world. Well, the best entrepreneur in the world ought to figure out what success looks like. And not just be successful, but understand why, so that you could actually repeat it. And I came to this conclusion that a lot of the people that were successful in entrepreneurship could not repeat it because they did not understand the underlying principles that had made them successful. So I brought this intense desire and this curiosity to learn, combined with a very high degree of passion and drive and enthusiasm. And so I had a relatively easy time attracting talent because people were like, man, this guy's a freight train. Like, he is going. Who knows where this train is going, but it sounds like fun to get on it and see what this thing turns into. And that's, we woke up every day. There was no possibility of failure. Right. Of course there was, that was not part of our thought process.
I was curious about that. Like, what was your level of confidence starting out?
Well, I think very high because, but again, it's very high off ignorance.
Right.
We didn't know how hard it was or what it was going to take. So to us, it was just, the entrepreneurial spirit is built on this drive and this passion and this determination that'll go through walls to see your vision become a reality. So failure was not an option because it just wasn't one of the things we ever evaluated. We never talked about it because we were not going to fail because we were not going to let that happen. And so we were always just driving and pushing and building. And that's part of what makes entrepreneurship so fun. When
you were starting out, or maybe even that first year or beyond, did you envision it getting as big as it became?
No. So I remember a conversation, the individual who owned the building where we were kind of being incubated in was my first business partner in this. And I remember going to him with the idea and saying, I've sold a few of these licenses. I think we can make a couple $100,000 off this. And I remember later, 8, 12, 10 years later, at an employee event, when in aggregate, we had sold more than a couple $100 million of the software. And I told the story of saying, I think we can sell a couple 100,000 of this and it's going to be great. And it's like, and it kept growing. And we didn't know how big it was going to get, but the goal was always, we can help more people, we can sell more product, we can make more money, which lets us hire more people, which is going to be more fun, which is going to be great. And so we set our heights. I mean, we would joke we wanted to get big enough to acquire Microsoft, knowing that would never happen. Right. But that's the level. If you start by trying to build a small lifestyle business, you're going to build something that may not even succeed. If you start by trying to change the world, you may not become the next Microsoft, but you'll be way bigger than just a few people.
Well, speak to that maybe a little further. What role did core values play in the company culture, and its development?
So the core values were huge. As we built, one of the things we thought, because me and my two co-founders were all Christians, we wanted to build a business that, even though it was very diverse for the belief systems of the employees, we wanted all of them to know that we were Christians and we were building the company on biblical core values. But we had not bothered to document those core values because we didn't think we needed to. We thought people would just sort of assimilate and understand them. But as we got bigger, we started opening satellite offices. It started becoming clear that assimilation of core values was not going to happen automatically. So we had a few incidents where it became clear that people were not clear what our expectations were relative to their behavior. So me and Nathan McNeil and Patrick Norman, my two co-founders, in addition to me, the three of us went on an offsite and we came up with 14 core values. And most of the core values were based on something someone had done that we did not want to ever happen again. Right. And so we said, here's the core values. And once we built the core values, we rolled them out in a big way. So we had a company-wide meetings where we said, these are the core values. We understand that somebody missed the memo, that core values were a big deal around here. But FYI, they're a really big deal around here. Right. And if you run afoul of these, then you can't be on the team. Right. And so we were very, very big deal on that. And then I would cover 2 of the 14 core values at every single monthly meeting. So every 7 months, you were hearing all the core values. So once people had been there like 7 years, you're getting a whole lot of the core values constantly. And then by doing that, even as we became a worldwide company, multinational with remote offices all over the world, the core values the employees were always hearing the core values. And then more importantly, we live by them. So they were very strict. I mean, if somebody Of course, it was grace and forgiveness too. But if somebody ran afoul of them and they should have known better, we were not going to let the employees say, well, that clearly things are allowed to slide. No, if you violated the core values, this company was built on those core values. And so what we saw is the people that thought they could have more fun somewhere else or didn't really fit slowly kind of cycled out.
Right.
And we attracted more and more and more of the people who fit our core values, which ended up being just an incredibly strong core values. Even today with 350, 400 employees worldwide, Bomgar Corporation, the core values are still very core to the business.
So did it become a challenge at scale to try to preserve that, or did the culture actually once it was solidified, then it just started attracting the right people and people would self-select out pretty easily if they didn't fit?
Yeah, so I think it perpetuated itself pretty nicely. But part of that is in the hiring process. We became very disciplined. Again, people did not have to be a Christian to work at Bomgar Corporation, but they had to live by the core values. And so one of the things we would always do is ask in job interviews, how do you feel about the core values? And we were not looking for necessarily them to weigh in, but we were looking for, was their response, yeah, I looked at them, I don't think they're going to be a problem. And it's like, no. We're not looking for employees that don't think they're going to be a problem.
Right.
We are looking for employees whose response is, yes, that's part of what attracted me to the company. I've worked for all these companies that did all this stuff that made me feel icky, and I want to work for a company that has a belief system, that feels strongly about that belief system, and is willing to follow through. And so over time, when you look for that in the hiring leaders and the managers and all that, all the way down to the front lines, and you're filtering based on, are they coming here because they're enthusiastic about the core values or because they can tolerate them? Well, you don't hire people that can tolerate your core values. You hire people that embrace them and are passionate about them. And yeah, so the core values, one of the things I'm most proud of is even as the company continued to grow, the core values are very strong and being lived out every day at Bomgar Corporation.
So at what point does it become about the people versus the idea for the company? In other words, you're the entrepreneur, you started, you got this great idea, you're executing, but at what point of scale is it like it's about the people that make it go any bigger than where it is right now?
Yeah, so I think it's probably about the people from the very beginning. You always have the product because that's what's driving the passion. The desire to change the world. Even employees at Apple are trying to create the iPhone and the iPad and all this sort of stuff. But without the incredible people and the passion, that's what drives it. So even our initial success was heavily driven by Nathan McNeil and Patrick Norman, my very first two hires. And we consistently saw that anytime we would settle for somebody who wasn't quite the right fit, it would never work out. It was always worth waiting for somebody who is really going to be incredible. And so the product certainly drove us because that was the dent in the universe we were making. But that dent was not going to happen without all these incredible people who woke up every day and built their lives and their families around this business and this mission and these coworkers and that vision.
How do you, and I think this is a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially as they're growing, where do you draw the line between saying, hey, we care, we're a family, but we can't go too deep to get involved in everybody's life?
Yeah, so I think we would offer whatever support people wanted. But first of all, I'm a big believer that an employee that has a healthy work environment and a healthy family life is going to be the most productive. So there's a lot of, as in politics, there's a lot of lies in business. One of them being trade-offs of people acting like, well, to be a really good employee, you have to make all these sacrifices. And my view was never that. My view was if we can create an environment that creates the best environment for the employee and for their family, then we're going to get the best out of them at work. And I don't want 12 hours of suboptimal performance where they're missing dinner with their family. I'd rather 8 or 9 hours of incredible performance because they're home with their family every night, because they're getting well paid, because they're excited about the work they do, and because they take vacations. We even, with our core values, if an employee took a vacation, if they would allow us to turn their email off while they were gone, we'd give them a $10 bonus per day of that they were on vacation.
Wow.
And it wasn't about the money, it was about sending a signal to them that when you're on vacation, we need you to be relaxed, rested, and recharged. We don't want you trying to get a little bit of work done on your vacation because that's not good for us or you. You come back burned out because you never did check out, and you only really got a couple hours of work done on your vacation anyway while you were gone a week. Check out. The world will not melt down. We'll be fine. You'll be fine. Come back completely recharged from being off the grid, and then go back to giving us your best. And so I felt the same way as a businessman and as a family man and as a Christian, that the right thing for my Christian values and my Christian faith was always the right thing for the employees, which was always the right thing for the product, which was always the right thing for our profits. So anybody that claims that profits and core values, or that profits and being a good business person or a good family man or whatever are in conflict, they're not. The right thing to do is always the right thing in the long term for the bottom line, the top line, and for yourself as a human being.
So since a focus of ours is money, how did money, or your perspective towards money, change for you from the initial phases of college into entrepreneurship, and then as the company started to scale, you're taking outside money? Has your view of money, can you cite actual philosophy towards money that shifted for you as you were growing?
Sure. So money is like time. So it doesn't make you happy because nobody would ever say, well, I have time and time makes me happy. It's like, no, it's just a resource. The question is, how do you use it? And that determines whether it makes you happy. And so money is the same way. Money is a resource, like time. You can use your money wisely. You can use your time wisely. But the things that really matter I think, are human relationships. In my case, a relationship with God and healthy human relationships. Those are the things that matter. And I think one of the things that really drove that home for me is in 2014, I sold the majority of the stock in the company because I was ready to enter politics and some other things in life. And I remember being on a conference call, the closing conference call for that transaction. There was about 30 people on the conference call that were all sounding off that the paperwork had been done, as bankers and investment firms and all this sort of stuff. And at the end of that phone call, my wife and the kids were somewhere else at the moment, so I was home alone for this conference call. And at the end of that conference call, they said, okay, everything's done, it's going to initiate wire transfers. So just unbelievable amounts of money was getting wired to my bank account. And I thought, okay, I've sold the big stake in the company that I had owned. And initially it's this feeling of euphoria, just because it's like, wow, I have like a ton of money. And I was like, well, what do I do now? It was like a Friday night. I mean, there's like, until Rachel and the kids got back. So I went in our backyard, we have a trampoline for the kids, and I went and just sat on the trampoline. And the feeling of euphoria lasted about 10 minutes, literally about 10 minutes. So 11 years of building an incredible company, and the feeling of euphoria lasts about 10 minutes, which made me realize you build something for the journey. Because at the end of 10 minutes, you're like, okay, I have a lot more money now, but I already had what I really needed. There's nothing I really wanted to do that I couldn't have already done. Like, what really changed? I have a bunch more of a resource, like a bunch more time. I have a bunch more money. But that's only fun if I'm using it in some journey to make the world a better place, or some passion or some quest. And so it was at that point that I realized, prior to that, I thought, anytime you're feeling down, surely you could check your bank account and it would give you some sort of a rush. The truth is no. Like, I don't think I've hardly ever checked my bank account. It's like, I know the money's there. I do check and make sure it's there periodically just to make sure it didn't disappear. But it doesn't create any sort of euphoria. Like, you just stare at it and you're like, it's just a number. And to me, it was the realization again that it's just a resource, and that what brings meaning to life is human relationships and family and relationship with God, and having all those things and waking every day with a passion and a pursuit. And the illustration I would use for that, for people who don't understand that, who would say, I promise you if I had $1 million, I'd be happy, is every day most of the people, well, everyone in America wakes up in America. And they wake up mostly with some money in the bank. The amount of money they have and waking up in America to somebody in a third world country ought to make them feel euphoric, right? You would think if you're living in the sub-Saharan Africa that if you wake up and you're an American and you have $1,000 in the bank, you should be in a perpetual state of euphoria. And you're not. And the reason is it's normal. You live in America and you have some money in the bank. So what? That's normal. So everybody assumes if I had way more money, then I'd be in a state of euphoria, but you already do compared to the most of the world. And if where you are feels normal, then anywhere you are on that food chain, all the way up to Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, They don't wake up every day, even with $100 billion net worth, and think, I feel a perpetual state of euphoria. They think it's normal, right? Because the day before they had that much money,
Right.
and now they still do. And what gets them excited is what gets me excited, is finding ways to change the world, to build businesses, to improve people's lives, to test the limits of human frontiers. And that's what brings people happiness. And that's what can bring you happiness if you have $5 in the bank, because it works the same way. It's all just one big continuum from absolute poverty all the way to the richest person in the world. And our mindsets and what makes us happy is the same regardless of where you are on that continuum.
Do you have a certain point of view about what a dollar's worth inside the business versus if you take it out as the owner?
So my view was always to reinvest. I mean, it was just, I was always looking at the best investment was whatever I was working on. Right. Wherever I had a real world personal commitment and I could control how much that money. So I didn't, there was very little money that came out of the business until I was ready to transition as a leader after 11 years to get into politics. And at that point I needed some resources, and I wasn't going to be the person steering the business on a day-to-day basis. So it made sense to take some money from there and plug it into political endeavors and public policy endeavors, and I've got a whole range of nonprofits and for-profits and other things that are all trying to make dents in the universe in a different way. But I'm always investing as close as possible to what I'm involved in and what I can control and what is closest to my passion.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way where maybe, because right now your enthusiasm is contagious, it's like a can-do attitude, you feel like it can do anything if you just, get focused, have a purpose, etc. But along the way, did you have doubts, or were there things that were dislocating to the progress you were making?
Well, first of all, I mean, building business is hard. So when you tell an 11-year story in the course of 90 seconds, it all sounds easy.
Yeah.
At the time, there's personnel issues. I think the hardest problems were always people problems. I would have much preferred to have to solve all the technical problems. The people problems always created the most stress for me because they had the biggest impact. Who exactly was sitting in which seat on the bus and where exactly they were sitting in the seat on the bus had such a profound impact on the velocity of the bus that anytime there was misalignment or there was friction or something like that, that was always by far my biggest stressor. So I think as it relates to that, those were the things kind of that I always wanted to get on the other side of to keep pushing the business forward.
So let's go back to 11 years ago. What would you today tell yourself 11 years ago, your entrepreneurial self from 11 years ago? Say, hey, let me give you a little advice here, son. What would you say?
I would probably, if I could only say a couple things, I would have told the younger version of myself to read the books of L. Rees, R-I-E-S is the spelling of the last name. Had I read L. Rees's book sooner, it would have saved me a lot of time and accelerated the business. He's just an incredible writer. I would have read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, sooner. And I would have read The Art of the Start 2.0 by Guy Kawasaki sooner. So honestly, if I could go back, I would probably do nothing but bring myself a reading list of the things that had been most pivotal to the decisions I made as a business person. And so I could have made those decisions in a more informed way and made them sooner in the process. Other than that, I don't know that I would have changed much. I mean, we built a great business. There were some things we didn't control. I graduated in 2003. The business started in 2003. There was no way to accelerate that.
Right.
That's when I had the idea. So everything else that could have accelerated or resulted in us building faster would be people and books and resources we came across in the process that gave us clarity in our direction.
How do you approach deal making? So you started the business, then you brought in two people that you now refer to as co-founders, right? Somewhat early in the business development. How do you pick them? And it sounds like they took the whole ride with you. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So that's unusual. I mean, a lot of times, there's partnerships break up, there's friction, there's issues. So how did you approach this deal making, give up equity, and do all the things you did?
Sure. So some of it was, so there was some friction in there. I mean, for example, one of the first things after they were on board was a long, heated debate about how much equity each person ought to have, how much of the business, right? And as the person starting with 100% myself, knowing that how much I gave away I could never get back, you tend to want to be cautious with those things. But also, they were making an incredible investment in the business, and it would not be what it is. So some of that required some great outside counsel. But I think as far as deal making, I looked for great people with shared values. So underpinning, even when we had some very heated conversations, underpinning that was a shared set of values. All three of us were Christians. All three of us deeply cared about each other and each other's families. And all of us wanted what was the ultimate fair and right on the other end of things. And so that led to decisions ultimately that settled in a very fair and equitable way for the three of us. But also we ended up putting a huge amount of stock into an equity pool for the employees. So at the time of the sale of the company, it was tens of millions of dollars went into the pockets of employees other than me and the co-founders, because we decided to approach the employees the way we had with each other, which was to say, if we want you to act like an owner, you've got to be an owner.
Right.
And to be an owner, we got to give you equity to make you an owner.
And was that in the form of options, or how did you get
Yeah,
it?
so it was stock units. And at the sale of the company, once it was clear that it was selling, we announced the deal when the majority stock in the company was going to sell. And one of the things I did with employees is I printed out Dave Ramsey's financial peace, 7 steps to financial peace for every employee. And Dave Ramsey's done a lot of stuff on financial peace and financial freedom and all of that. And every employee got a copy of this. And I said, look, some of you are going to find a way to make yourself worse off with all this money. But my hope and prayer is that most of you follow the 7 steps on this sheet, which is set aside some emergency cash, pay off your credit card debt, pay off any car loans you have, pay off your house if you can. And a whole lot of employees did exactly that. They went through and they set aside some emergency cash, and a lot of employees paid off cars, paid off student loan debts, paid off even houses due to the payout they got from the company. So as it relates to money, that was, I think, one of the things I'm most proud of is taking hundreds of employees and all at one time being able to leapfrog them way along the line of reaching, financial peace and financial freedom, and encouraging them to make wise decisions with this large infusion of money they were each getting.
And how much of your company did you allocate for the employees?
More than 1/3 of the company was to employees other than me.
Wow.
So it was at the time of the deal, more than 1/3 of the money was getting distributed, which ended up being a very large amount of money. And also the subsequent owners of Bomgar Corporation have been very generous with stock options and grants and co-invest, where they've generally offered the employee to invest alongside the investor at exactly the same terms.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty incredible
Yes.
because any upside the investors get, the employees are right there with them. So I've been pleased that even after that initial transaction, the approach toward employees and equity and co-investing and all that has kept everyone very aligned.
And I think that's a theme, right? I mean, no matter what business you might have and what the scale of it is, whether maybe your doctor's office, a small accounting firm, whatever it might be, there's employees that work there. And if you can have the mentality saying that, geez, we've got multiple ways to compensate and incentivize, and one of them is to give them some upside, to give them a piece of this company so they show up with ownership mentality every day.
Sure, and every business that I would ever get involved in, I would try to find a way to structure some sort of equity component or incentive compensation that says the people who do a good job are going to make more. What I did not ever want to be in a situation where I was walking out of the building celebrating because something good had happened to me, but I was leaving behind the people that really made it happen for me. So what I told the employees, and actually the way the stock in the company was structured, the share price was the same for every single share of stock. So on the day we announced that TA Associates was acquiring a majority stake in the company, I actually had a PowerPoint presentation where I put the stock price up for all employees. And I said, the reason I can show you this stock price is because this is how much I'm getting for my shares, and this is how much you're getting for your shares.
Right.
So however many you have, now different employees, different people have different amounts of stock, but whatever it is, you can multiply it by the number on this deck, on this PowerPoint presentation slide, and that's exactly how much money you're walking away with. There's no special preferences here. There's nobody that's at the front of the line. There's nobody that's getting a special kicker or accelerator. All of us are getting paid exactly that number times however many share units you have.
And did every employee from the receptionist, so everybody had something?
Everybody had something. Everybody had something worth at least tens of thousands of dollars for them personally up to much more than that.
Wow.
So it was interesting. I mean, we even had some employees that had started a week, 2 weeks before the deal, and they were given a stock grant because we were telling them, look, it doesn't matter how long you've worked here, even if you were here 48 hours, as long as you started and you contributed to this business at least 1 minute before this transaction happened, you're going to have stock in this because you contributed into it. And we're not going to be sitting in this room with some of us celebrating and some of us missing out. We're all going to be celebrating. Now, again, the amounts may be different, but everybody here is going to be celebrating and everybody's going to have a significant financial upside.
So this sounds like it goes to when you're looking at money through certain lenses, that people who have a scarcity orientation toward money would feel like they can't do that. I couldn't give new employees grants for equity. But it seems like your whole view is abundance, that there's an unlimited supply that can be created based on our efforts, and we can share it.
It is, and my experience is those that hold things tightly get less. and my own experience was, even with the employees, even giving away large amounts of stock, because initially all the stock had to fund, all of it had to come out of my own shareholdings. The more it felt like, and continued all the way as long as I was a shareholder at Bomgar, that the more I gave away, the more I kept became worth. So ultimately, what I retained, even after giving away far more, and even our investors, when they came in, I asked them periodically, what was most surprising, and they said, we've never seen a founder of a company give away as much stock as you've given away. Right. But the truth is, what I still retained ended up being worth far more than I ever thought it would be. Right. Even if I had tried to hold on to the whole pie for myself, right, I ended up getting more than double what I would have gotten had from the very beginning I really tried to hold the pie to myself. Yeah. And the benefit is not only that I got more than double myself, it's that all these other people got to eat pie too, yeah. Which is just way more fun. I mean, who doesn't want to make hundreds of employees, wealthy in various degrees from high to low? It's fun and incredible, and it's better for everyone. It's not a trade-off of, if I want to get rich, I have to hold, but if I want them to be rich, I have to give. In this case, and I think in business in general, the more you give, the wealthier you get, because everybody who's receiving wants to make their own shareholdings worth something. And in doing so, they make your own shareholdings worth much more than it would otherwise be.
So a lot of people are watching this saying, boy, I want to work for him. So what were the core values that, or some of the key ones? I mean, I know there were 14, but what are some of the key core values that would have somebody know if they're the right fit for you?
Yeah, so one was practice good stewardship. The way you use money and the way you should see us as leaders of the company use money should be completely consistent with the core values of the business. We're always using money. You shouldn't see expense accounts that are out of control, et cetera. Treating everybody with respect. And that meant customers, competitors, vendors. Right. Nobody should be yelling out on the phone with anyone. Right. We are going to take the high road in all of this. And everything we looked at, all the way down to one of our core values was speak the truth in love, which we said, look, when you have hundreds of employees with different personalities, some of them, there's going to be conflict at some point. We need to speak the truth in love, go to another person as a fellow human being, try to make it right, speaking to the good that you can do for them. And not this, you're making my life difficult, but how can we work together so that your life is better, my life is better, caring deeply about the person individually.
One of my sayings relative to entrepreneurs is that the great thing about entrepreneurs is that they fall in love with their ideas. And the problem with entrepreneurs is that they fall in love with their ideas. And entrepreneurs notoriously get very ADD, or they have an idea they want to go with. They have another idea, they need to go with it. You talked about focus. So how core a concept is focus, and can you maybe drill down deeper to have us understand what you mean by focus?
Sure. So in an entrepreneurial endeavor, we ultimately came up and realized there were three major things that made us successful. One was focus, especially a business headquartered in Mississippi that's got worldwide operations. You don't have the time and resources, but frankly, I don't think a well-funded business in Silicon Valley has the time or resources to launch too many things at one time. So the way I view it is an entrepreneurial endeavor is like a rocket ship. Okay, so when you have a rocket ship, you need to get that into orbit. And if you run out of fuel short of orbit, you fall down back to the earth and crash. And so when entrepreneurs, because of the way their brains work, people like me are always having ideas about how to make the world a better place. So what you tend to want to do is you keep building rockets, right? And you have all these different rockets, and then you have limited rocket fuel, which is, in the case of rocket fuel for entrepreneurs, is talented people and money. And so what you end up doing is you put a little bit of it in each rocket, and then you launch them all. And the problem is none of them have the velocity to escape velocity where they can start orbiting the Earth under their own power. So that became clear to me as reading Al Ries's book, Focus, that what we needed to do is kill off all the extra rockets, some of which were painful because we had built some cool products on the side that we had to realize we were never going to be the best in the world at. They were good products, but they were never going to be the best in the world, and that we were not deeply passionate about them the way I was about technical support software, because that was my background and that's why I got in it. So we had to kill off some of those products, which was pretty painful, take all the time and people and money and put it into this technical support software that we were going to get to escape velocity. And wow, did it get to escape velocity. And the beauty of it is once you have a rocket at escape velocity that's doing incredible things, operating under its own power, and throwing off a lot of extra profits and extra cash, you can then take that rocket fuel and start putting it in other rockets and launch other rockets. The same way Apple did with the iPod, and then with the iPhone, and then with the iPad. Apple did not try to launch all of those at the same time. Each of those reached escape velocity and turned into a cash cow that they could then use that cash to spin up the next thing in the evolution. But a lot of entrepreneurs try to do all that at one time, run out of money, nothing, and it all fails to launch. Another thing we realized that was our second of kind of the most pivotal things is success was driven by being different. You are not going to beat a billion-dollar company by imitating them. So we looked at the entire landscape of businesses and said, what is everybody doing, and how can we be the opposite of whatever they're doing? If they're focused on small businesses, we're going to focus on enterprises. If they're focused on being a low-end solution, we're going to be a premium, expensive solution. No, I mean, even the color orange we picked because it was the most opposite color of all of our competitors. And we wanted all of the competitors to look the same. And then when you went to bomgar.com, you're like, now this company's business, different.
Right.
Their business model, the colors, the licensing, the structure, including the core values, just feels completely different from the dozens of other companies you could pick with competing technologies. So with focus and being different, and ultimately the third was simplicity, just keeping everything, no nickel and diming customers, just everything very simple. How do you buy it? How do you use it? Those three things, but especially focus and being different, proved pivotal, and I think were the only reasons we were ultimately able to become number one in the world in the industry we're in.
Do you find that any of these principles adapt to your personal life outside of being an entrepreneur?
All of them. So especially now that I serve in public service as a politician, I try to be the anti-politician in everything I do. I mean, I'm always looking for what would a normal politician do that everyone doesn't like, and how can I do the opposite of that?
Right.
It starts with telling the truth when everyone else is not. But how can I be different?
Yeah.
How can I be different? And the voters seem to love somebody who's just different. And in this case with politics, different means doing what's right all the time. Also focus. I focus on a relatively narrow number of things, and I stack huge bets on a small number of issues. And that in politics is how you move things, is becoming an expert at one or two things and just always pushing, instead of knowing a little bit about a bunch of things and then none of them reach escape velocity.
Right.
None of them get into orbit.
So, and from an investment standpoint, because and this would be something interesting, with these particular philosophies. So, now that you've had the the transaction, windfall of cash comes in, what is your investment philosophy?
So my investment philosophy is to invest with my passions. So a lot of my investments are pretty safe in the stock market, like everyone else. But I try to take 10% or so, maybe 15%, and align them with high-risk endeavors that I'm personally involved with, where I see what I believe is the future of human organization or the future of a product or a future of a technology that I feel like is ahead of where everyone else is right now. And try to place bets there before everybody else sees the opportunity and shows up. So I've got a lot of exciting investments I can't quite talk about yet, yeah. but that's what I'm trying to look over. Where is the arc of human history, and where is it going, and how can I get there before everyone else is already there, and how can I pour my time and effort and focus into those areas as well and match it with money? And my hope is that strategy will continue to pay dividends, in addition to just a long-term investment strategy in the stock market and worldwide.
So it sounds like 10% is basically the high-risk stuff, that you just have a passion or believe in, but you recognize it's high risk.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, do you diversify or do you focus or
So I'm a big believer in being diversified in investments that have no say in, but focused in the ones you're focused on. So the investments I have that are just broad-based are broadly exchange-traded funds, very diversified in the stock market, S&P 500, international stocks, Vanguard ETFs. I've got money managers that manage money as well, but those are also in very diversified portfolios of mutual funds and all of that. Because again, I'm not an expert in any of those areas, right. So there's no reason for me to put a huge bet on one company that I'm not working for that company, or I don't have some special knowledge of that. But I don't believe I can outsmart New York stock traders unless there's something unique about my knowledge or skill or expertise that I can see ahead of everyone else. So if I'm, with the 85 to 90% of my assets, they're very broadly invested. But with that 10 or 15%, and especially when you're dealing with 1 or 2%, I've got some of those assets in just as risky, the sort of things that you're probably going to lose all your money, but if you don't, you're going to make 50 times your money. But I would never invest in those type of investments if it was not money that I could absolutely lose and walk away and wouldn't bother me a bit.
Do you go into real estate at all, or things outside the markets?
Not currently. There's some really interesting things in real estate with regard to new jurisdictions around the world. There's a lot of jurisdictions that are being set up that have special governance structures as compared to what's already there. So if you look at that, one of the largest untapped markets in the world is the market for governance. There's only roughly 200 countries, and they have exclusive control over governance, and the ones with good governance are infinitely more wealthy than the countries with bad governance. And there's a lot of interesting opportunities in that to try to set up good governance zones within otherwise very poorly governed jurisdictions. And when you can do that, you can take an acre of land that was worth, $1,000 and make it worth $50,000. And so there's some really interesting things happening there with real estate. But I am not an investor in real estate in the traditional form because I don't bring anything special to that table. I don't know the real estate market. So I have some investments in technology because I know technology, and some investments in governance because with the deep understanding I have of political theory and all of that, I'm especially interested in the market for governance.
Well, I was going to say that, so that is another thing that aligns with your values. Like you would love to support something that has better governance, and you see that as a way to improve the lives of people.
Absolutely, and the wealth and prosperity that can be captured by improving the lives of people with better governance under whatever government structure, better governance, it makes a bunch of people happier and a bunch of people wealthier, and it's a great way to make a bunch of money in the process.
Well, I think it might be time for your own entrepreneurial book. Phenomenal amount of wisdom and energy and passion here, so thank you so much for sharing it.
Look, I'm thrilled to be able to. Thank you so much.
When I think of JT McCormick, I think that none of us have any excuses. If you can imagine being brought up as a young child where you are mixed-raced, and at the same time, your father is literally a pimp that works on the streets, and that somehow you can grow up in that environment and succeed in life on a high level and garner lots of wisdom and have a positive outlook on life, none of us have any excuses. None of us have anything to complain about. We can only be inspired by that example. JT McCormick is somebody who I admire because of the circumstances that he overcame and the success that he created. And I can tell you that this interview is going to profoundly affect you in your understanding of money, how to create it, how to protect it, and how to grow it. Enjoy my interview with JT McCormick. JT, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Patrick, this is going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I have watched your story. I've seen you tell your story. So now I'm really excited to be face to face with you to kind of talk about this and to share your wisdom. So let's go back. Tell us about your childhood and kind of how things started out in life for you.
Oh, Patrick, come on. That's an open-ended question. I mean, where do I start? So my father was a black pimp in the 1970s.
Literal pimp.
Literally, yeah. It's not like today where somewhere in our society we turn the word pimp into a positive. Pimp my ride, pimp my house.
Yeah, right.
No, my father was a real pimp. He put women on a street corner. They sold their bodies. He collected their money. He was a 1970s pimp and drug dealer. He was a black man. Wow. And my mother is a white woman, and she was raised in a 1950s institutional orphanage.
Wow.
My last name, McCormick, we have no clue where it comes from. My mother was given that name in the orphanage, and to this day, we don't know where or why where that name originated from. So those are my origins of where I started. My father has 23 confirmed children. We joke and say confirmed because God only knows how many more are out there. Wow. The most he had by one woman was 3. So I kind of let you know how much he got around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean...
And what part of the country were you in?
Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio.
That godforsaken place. But for me, not a lot of positive memories outside of Dayton. But, yeah, that's where I started and give you the cliff notes. I've been sexually molested by my father's prostitutes when I was a kid. I was in and out of juvenile 3 different times. Left with my half-brothers and sisters for 3 weeks when I was 12 years old. Their heroin addict mother left us.
When you say left, what do you mean?
Took off, said she was going to go get a pack of cigarettes on a Sunday afternoon, and did not come back for 3 weeks. And I was 12, and my half-brothers and sisters were 4, 3, and 2. And so about 5 days into this, we realized we don't have any more food. So I had the 4-year-old watch the other 2, and I went down to the store. This is February in Ohio, so cold snow. Wow. I'm supposed to be in school. And I go down to the store, I steal food, come back so we can eat. And about 7 days into it, we don't have any more diapers. So I had to potty train my 2-year-old brother, and I sat him on the toilet. And he's crying, I'm crying, and I said, hey, this is how it's got to go down. Until something comes out, you're not getting up. And that's how I potty trained him. And 3 weeks went by, but I'll be damned if I was going to leave them. Someone asked me the question recently. They said, when was I first in leadership? Mm-hmm. And that was the moment for me, because I had to make a decision. Do I leave my half-brothers and sisters and go to school? Or do I man up at 12 years old, be a leader, and take care of them? So I refused to leave them.
And that was interesting. So you had this sense of responsibility, but at the same time, the adult role models, didn't take any responsibility for you or the kids.
No.
So it's interesting that you felt like you had to step up and be a leader and take responsibility there.
I don't know exactly where it comes from. Mm-hmm. It was just something that they were my half-brothers and sisters, and I wasn't going to leave them.
Right. So what finally happened? You're left for 3 weeks. Somebody came back?
So their mother came back. My half-brothers and sisters were obviously excited to see their mother. Mm-hmm. I stood back, and I just kind of waited, and then when everything calmed down, I stepped up to her. I'm all of 12 years old. And I say, where the F have you been? Mm-hmm. This woman punched me so hard, my ears started bleeding. She started kicking me, beating me, and so I ran away. Well, I got brought back, and the beating the second time was worse than the first one. Wow. So the next day, one of my uncles, my father's brothers, picked me up and took me out to another one of my dad's girlfriend's houses. Mm-hmm. And I thought everything was going to be okay until the weekend came around, and I realized that, oh, wow, she's an alcoholic. And so she started beating me, and I just got tired of getting beat. So I fought back, and she called the police, and I went to juvenile. And I was in juvenile for 2.5 months. My mother was in Texas.
Oh, she beats you.
She beat me.
But you go to juvenile.
I go to juvenile
And she's
because
not
I
fun.
fought back. She called the police. She was the adult. And so the police came, picked me up. My father was in England. My mother was in Texas, but did not know I was back in Ohio. She had no clue where I was. Whole different story.
Yeah.
But I was in juvenile for 2.5, almost 3 months. No one knew I was there.
Wow.
So I just stuck.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where'd it go from there?
Once I got out, one of my aunts picked me up. My real name's Javon. And so one of the correctional officers, at the time, Javon wasn't a common name. So she said, hey, do you have an aunt named Jean? I said, yes. And I got really excited. And so my Aunt Jean ended up picking me up. She took me to one of my other aunts' houses to stay. And late at night, I heard my aunt and my uncle talking. They weren't arguing, but they said, we can't afford to feed them. So in the middle of the night, I pack up my little suitcase and I leave. I go sleep on a bus stop. And so
How
I
old
was
were you?
homeless. I was 13.
Wow.
And so I was homeless, but every day I knew I could go get a meal at school. So I'd take my little suitcase with me full of things, and I'd walk to school. I'd show up, and I was in middle school. Kids are relentless at that age. So I would get teased, and I got tired of being teased. I got in a fight, beat a little boy up. Little boy went into a coma. I go back to juvenile.
Wow.
And so that kind of went on. Like I said, I was in there 3 different times. And so at the age of 15, I finally got reunited with my mother in Texas. And I'll make the story short there. When they went to enroll me in high school, my mother, I'm in the counselor's office, and she says, okay, you're a sophomore in high school. You should be in geometry. Unknown to anyone, that was the first time I'd ever heard the word geometry. And so I had no clue what I was going into, but I was going to try. So I go in there, 6 weeks pass, everyone pretty much figures out, okay, this kid's not too bright. And so they test me, and I'm testing on a 5th or 6th grade level at the age of 15.
Wow.
Graduation rolls around. Obviously, I don't have enough credits. I ended up having to go to summer school. I never graduated or walked the stage. Had to go to summer school to take remedial classes. Got my high school diploma. My high school diploma was given to me by a janitor. And
How's that work?
So when I finished my remedial classes, they said, okay, you can go back up to your school and get your diploma. So I go, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, there's going to be this celebration. There's going to be confetti. There's 2 cars in the parking lot. And I walk in, there's a secretary and the janitor. And I say, I'm here to pick up my high school diploma. He walks over to the lady. She nods, and he goes to the safe and pulls out the piece of paper, comes over to me, hands it to me, and that was it.
Wow. No
No confetti, no streamers. I get home, and my mother tells me, great, you got 2 weeks to find a job. Damn, yeah, no confetti, high school diploma, that was it. So,
Wow. And then what was your first job?
cleaning toilets.
Oh.
I was cleaning toilets, and I was a busboy. And my mother and I would always make the joke when we were growing up. I was with my mother the first 9 years of my life. We were poor, we owned welfare, the whole 9. And we would always joke that we were so poor we couldn't afford the O and the R. We were just po.
Right.
And so the damnedest thing, my first job was at a place called Po Folks.
Oh, come on.
I cannot make this up. It was at a
Come on.
restaurant called Po Folks, and I cleaned the toilets, and I was a busboy from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. And that was my first job.
Wow. So you're gonna have to finish the track now. So that's your first job.
Yeah.
How do you where does it go from there?
So my mother was working at an insurance company, Nationwide Insurance, and she got me a job in the mailroom. And I went and applied and so I walked around with this cart, delivered mail, and my first job, I remember my salary was $10,000 a year. And so that was my first job, and I really got to experience corporate America. And I got to see how people shook hands, how they interacted with one another. And I was just a sponge. I paid attention to all my surroundings. Anytime I could see an executive, I would do my best to try to follow them for a little bit just to hear how they spoke, what they did, how they said it. And so I was there 4 years, and to make a little extra money, I also personal trained on the side, working out. And one of my clients his father owned a payday loan company. And he said to me, he said, hey, you should go work for my dad. Well, at the time, I didn't know what his dad did. I knew they had a big-ass house and a bunch of cars. So I said to him, I'm like, man, your dad could be a drug dealer. I don't know, just because that was the world I was from.
Right.
And he goes, no. He goes, my dad started with one payday loan company, and now he had over 400 of them. And what intrigued me when I interviewed with his dad was his dad only had a high school diploma. So that really spoke to me. I'm like, okay, well, if he did this, maybe I can do it.
Right.
And so I worked with him in the proofing department, where you sat back in this room and you looked at reports and deposit slips and you made sure all the money matched. It was so tedious. I hated it.
Right.
60, 90 days in, I asked the manager, I said, okay, how many reports have been proofed in a day? And she goes, like 42. I said, okay. So driving home that day, I said, all right, tomorrow I'm going in, I'm going to smash the record. And I did like 72 the next day.
Wow.
And then 73. And then a month afterwards, the owner calls me up to the front. And real country guy, Texan, he goes, hail, Jovan. Now, my name's Javon, not Jovan. He goes, hail, Jovan, what is it you want to do, son? And I'm sitting in his office, and he had this picture behind him of him and the executive vice presidents. I've never been afraid to ask for what I want, because the worst thing you can say is no.
Right.
Maybe F no, but still no.
Right.
And for me, no just means not right now.
Right.
And so he asked me, what do you want? I said, I want to be in the picture. And he goes, hell, son, you got balls, don't you? You asked me what I wanted. And he said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you out to different offices, and you can learn how the offices work and do a little cleanup on offices that aren't functioning well. Did that for about 9 months. Calls me back into his office 9 months later. He said, hell, here's what I'm going to do for you, son. You're going to be a regional vice president of Louisiana, Vegas, or Portland, Oregon. You get to pick. Well, I'd spent time in Louisiana, and no disrespect to anybody, but good God, did not want to go there. Vegas, in my opinion, worse than Louisiana, and so I had never been to Portland, Oregon. So he sends me up there to go see if I like it. I get off the plane, I see the trees. This is January, so it's not the nicest time of the year. I get off the plane, I see the trees, I see the air, smell the air. Oh, that's it. I'm in. I'd never even left the airport. I go, I'm in. This is where I want to go. I'd never seen anything like that. So ended up moving to Portland, Oregon, and that's at 23 years old. He gave me an opportunity to be a regional vice president. And let me back up. He didn't give me an opportunity. I created an opportunity. And so worked there. 30 days into it, Patrick, he calls me up and he goes, hell, Jovan, I want you to go down to Eugene, Oregon, and open an office. And my response was, yes, sir. He goes, need anything from me? No, sir. Hung up the phone. I sat there and I go, I have no clue how to open an office. I'm 23 years old. So I just said to myself, okay, step one, where the hell's Eugene, Oregon? Step two, drive to Eugene, Oregon. Right. Step three, I got there, need a realtor, need to find a place. And then it hit me, wait a minute, I got 3 offices in Portland, Oregon. I'll just duplicate those and make this look like that. And that's what I did. So 3 years later, I ended up with 6 offices, 8 total. 3 of them I opened. 2 of them were the purchase of a competitor that we bought out. And so incredible opportunity for me. And what made me leave, one day, I'm mixed race, half white, half black. A white lady comes into one of the offices, and she's paying on her $100 loan. Now, you and I both know, if you've got to borrow $100,
Right.
you're in a pretty strapped position.
Yeah.
And so she was coming in to pay on her $100 loan. It was like $21 to make her payment, but she had a mixed race little boy with her. And all I saw was me and my mom. And the next day I resigned. I couldn't do it because it was an incredible opportunity. To this day, I thank him. He was so instrumental in my career in allowing me to have that opportunity. But it's a vicious cycle that so many people are just stuck in and they can't get out. I mean, we had people who had loans at all 6 offices.
Oh, wow.
And they're just stuck. They're using one to pay for the other, and I just want it out. And I don't knock it. You know, it's legal. Make your money, do your thing. but I just wanted out.
So you left that job, and you said you'd, you thanked them, et cetera, but you just couldn't do it anymore. Okay. So where did you go from there?
Moved back to San Antonio, Texas, and had saved quite a bit of my money. And so, because when you don't have money and then you finally get some, you do one or two things. You hoard it or you spend it all.
Right.
So I became a bit of a hoarder. But I started self-teaching myself how to invest in the stock market. I was always intrigued by the stock market. It's the damnedest thing. You don't have to invent anything. I don't have to create anything. I can invest $100 and turn it into 1,000, 1,000 to 10, and I don't invent anything. To this day, I'm still waiting for somebody to come ask me for all this money back that I've been able to make. But I moved back to San Antonio, Texas, and I thought, okay, what's next? And so I'm 46. I'm old. And so I'm in the...
Now you were, how old were you? You were in your 20s then.
Yeah, I was in my 20s then. Now I'm 46. So take you back then. I got the classifieds where you actually used to look in the paper for a job.
Right.
And so there was a lady that was hiring for a mortgage processor. I thought, okay, sounds kind of cool. I don't know the mortgage industry. So I applied, went in, interviewed with her. She saw my resume from what I had just done, and she said, why would you want this job? I said, well, I don't know the industry. I'm willing to learn. I'll do everything I can to learn. So she hired me, went in, learned every facet of mortgage, went from a loan processor to a mortgage officer to ended up working for Countrywide Home Loans. We all know how that party ended up. But I was really intrigued with the founder of Countrywide Home Loans, Angelo Mazzello, and the reason is, and I'm still a fan. I know there's many people in this country who hate him, but damn it, I'm going to say it. I am a fan, and when I read that he started Countrywide Home Loans, which at one time was the world's largest home lender, he started it in California on a card table on the courthouse steps. I thought, okay. He was a hustler.
Right.
And so I was just intrigued by that. And so I got the opportunity to meet him and like 2 years ago. And it was great. I got a picture with him. But anyway, learned the mortgage industry, made a ton of money. We all know what happened with the mortgage industry. I ended up making $1 million at one point through investing and working. I went broke. I did exactly what I said. Lottery winner. Spent it all. Went broke, so broke I had to borrow money from my stepdad and my best friend to pay my rent. I remember going to the gas station at night with a handful of $10 in quarters and saying, can I have $10 on number 7 to get gas, because I was embarrassed. I had to get money out of my change box, and so I was broke. I had no money, and went from the mortgage industry, one Countrywide, to Wachovia, another one, we know what happened there. And then from Wachovia, I started working for a company called Insperity. And Insperity was, they sell healthcare benefits, payroll, workers' comp, and I sold the service to a gentleman who owned a software company. And 30 days after I closed him, took me 17 months to close him, by the way, as well. So I was relentless on my follow-up. So I closed him, and 30 days later, he calls me up and he says, hey, how would you like to come work for me? And I was like 38 at the time, and he said, I go, man, that's software. That's a young man's game. I know nothing about that. He goes, but you know how to sell, and you're great at follow-up. And he said they never had a sales team. So I said, count me in. I'll come do it. So I was the lowest paid person, and we used to make our calls in the storage closet, and that's where we used to make our sales calls.
Boiler room.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew nothing about enterprise software. I would call competitors and have them pitch me to learn the field, but I knew, okay, I'll just keep calling everybody.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. I never heard anybody else do that. So how would you learn how people in this industry pitch?
Yeah.
And you would call competitors as if you were a prospective customer.
Yes.
And get the pitch and say, okay, I see what they're doing.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's exactly what I was
doing homework, yeah.
Well, and I was very fortunate that I was employee number 13, so there were about 9 software engineers there. I was very fortunate that I could walk out of the storage closet and say, hey, do we do this? And, based on whatever question someone asked me when I was prospecting. And people would say, yes, we do that. No, we don't. And I go, well, I know we don't, but I just sold it. So what are we going to do? And so they were phenomenal team, smart people. And my goal was, okay, let me get in, let me sell. And it was a phenomenal opportunity that my attitude was, okay, there's the Fortune 1000, and I'm going to call all of them. And my attitude was, and so many people ask me this in sales, JT, why does no not bother you? If I'm prospecting the Fortune 1000 and I call you up and you say no, I got 999 other people I can go call. Someone's going to say yes. And my mentality is this as well. When I was a kid and I would come home from school and I'd ask my mother, are we going to eat dinner? She would say no. That hurts because there was nothing I can do. You saying no, you won't do business with me? Whatever, I'll call someone else. I would just keep calling. And so, long story short, with the software company, I was the lowest paid person, employee number 13, and we ended up scaling the company. 2.5 years later, I became the president of the company. We scaled the company from one office, storage closet in Austin, to having offices in Houston, Dallas, and Monterrey, Mexico. And we ended up with over 100 people. And so, and I don't write code.
So from the sales side, you just grew, and then you took over as president of the company.
Yeah. So I went from the sales guy to EVP of sales and marketing to president of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then how long were you there?
I was there 5 years. 5 years. And it's interesting. I'll share this with you, Patrick. So many people are intrigued with the story, and they celebrate me going from the storage closet to president.
Right.
But many people in our country don't want to hear what it took for me to do that. People don't want to hear about the sacrifice. No one wants to talk about how in a 5-year time period, I only took 11 days vacation. Now, you and I both know we live in a society now where people take 11 days vacation in the first quarter of the year.
Right.
They don't want to hear about that. There are pictures of me in the delivery room with my wife for my firstborn. You can see my laptop open in the pictures. And people don't want to hear about that because that doesn't fall with work-life balance. My attitude is, if you want to be successful, success falls, and it's funny, they both start with S, success and sacrifice. You're going to have to do it. So many people don't want to hear about that aspect of it, but that's what happened. Phenomenal opportunity, worked hard, and there you have it.
And what happened with exiting? I mean, so 5 years later, you're president, you exit, what happened?
So I was president, was sole owner, CEO, Dustin, great guy. Still enjoyed working with him in the team there. But again, I don't write code. Wasn't passionate about it. And Q3 of 2015, I was on a flight, and I don't like to fly, and I hit a lot of turbulence, and I had 2 children at the time, and I said, oh my God, if something happened to me, my children would not know where I came from. They wouldn't know that we don't know where our last name comes from. So I set out on this mission to put my story in a book for my children. Never wanted that book to go public because of the horrific stories that were in there. And truth be told, I didn't want people to know my background. I didn't want you to know my father was a drug dealer. I didn't want you to know I didn't have a degree. There's many people out there who assumed I had an MBA. No, if you assumed it, I just ran with it.
Right.
And so I was whatever I needed to be to get to wherever I wanted to go. So I set out on this mission, met the 2 guys from Book in a Box, Tucker Max and Zach Obrant. And Tucker comes over to my office. We sit down. I said, look, man, I don't even know if this is a book. I don't care if I ever sell a copy. And here's my story. And he looks at me at the end. He goes, yeah, you got a book. So long story short, we're wrapping up, and we were sitting in this conference room. It was like a 35, 50 person conference table. And he's like, man, you've built a great company here. And I go, no, I did not build this. This was a combination of a lot of hard work by many people. I just got to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And he goes, when you go through our process, will you give me feedback? Yeah, why not? Unbeknown to him, I was already looking to transition out of the software company. So I get my first email from Tucker's company, and I call him up and I say, hey, you still want feedback? And he goes, yeah. I said, I swing hard. He goes, give it to me. I go, okay, this is great. This is great. Keep doing this. This sucks. What are you thinking? Stop this immediately. And he goes, you got all that from an email? Yeah. Would you like to be on our advisory board? One thing led to another. I started doing my book with them, woke up one day as CEO of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and that's where you are now.
That's where I am now. So here we are. I've been with Tucker and Zach now 2.5 years later. One of the things that I've greatly appreciated from them both is not only did they make me president and CEO, but they also gave me equity in the company. And that's something I never had at the software company.
Wow. So now there's so much here that's rich in the story. Let's get into the lessons.
All right.
Now we got the people who want to learn from your experience.
Right.
It seems like everything you threw yourself into, from cleaning the toilets to learning about mortgages, et cetera, that you just went out and learned everything you could.
Yes.
So you dispel the myth, I think, through your story that you have to have an academic background in a given area to be able to succeed at it. Because I think there's a lot of people right now who are working in jobs they don't like, or that they feel compressed. Maybe they want to start to set up some side hustle to start to generate some income and have a dream of moving out and doing something else. What would you recommend to them? What's their path?
Learn everything. One of the greatest things for me, a third grade teacher, Miss Dudek, I remember she stood in front of the class one day and she said, there are no stupid or dumb questions. I took that literally. And to this day, I'll ask for anything and everything, because the worst thing you can say to me is no. So I'll ask questions, and it's the damnedest thing. You'd be surprised that if you ask someone, people will take the time to explain things to you. Or you'd be surprised what you can ask for that people will actually give to you. But for me, it's exactly what you said. I remember when I was standing there cleaning the toilets one morning, and I looked at the toilet, and it was filthy. It was from the night before. I said, okay, if this is my job right now, no matter what I do in this world, I'm going to be the best at it. So these are going to be the cleanest toilets in San Antonio, Texas. And that was my goal. That was my mission. And so everything I approach with that same thought process. How can I be the best at this? And I want to learn, I want to ask questions, and I want to be the best at whatever it is I'm doing.
What's the role of attitude? I mean, what's interesting is, I'm sure there could be many different types of responses to your story if somebody was hearing the story.
Right.
Because it's a very tragic story as far as what your upbringing was, how you're being beaten by prostitutes, you're left with young children for extended periods of time. I mean, you get into that story. But you're saying it with this twinkle in your eye, a little bit of a smile on your face. So you make it kind of like. Almost like you're like, I'm not feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling really horrible for you.
Right. I don't do that.
And we're laughing a little bit about the story, you know. So how does that attitude emerge? That, because you could be really angry, you could be really, you could be a lot of different things. Instead, you're sitting here with a smile on your face, telling a story, and even as you're reflecting back on it, it's like so horrible that you have to laugh, kind of a thing, right?
When that last piece there, when we were poor, my mother and I, at times, all we had was laughter.
Right.
And I would be lying if I didn't tell you that in my 20s and things that I wasn't angry at times. There's been some struggles. I was horrific in relationships. I mean, a monster. I was a walking monster. Couldn't hold a relationship, didn't know how to have a relationship. And so that was a tough time period for me. There was times where I was angry. I'll share this one piece with you. I was about 33 years old, and my mother and I were having a conversation. And I remember as a kid, my dad would call and say, hey, get him ready. I'm going to come pick him up. And man, I'd stand in that window for hours waiting for that man, loyal. I'm like, oh, he's going to come. And you look, oh, there he is. No, that's not him. It's not him. 4, 5, 6 hours, he'd never show up. When I would wake up, there would be a Hot Wheel, a little book, some little trinket there for me. And my mom would say, man, I'm doing my best not to tear up. My mom would say that your dad stopped by. And I'd go outside with all these other kids and show them, hey, look what my dad got me, blah, blah, blah. At 33 years old, my mom told me, she said that it wasn't your dad that did that, it was me. I was furious because I had given this love to someone who really wasn't there versus the person I felt should have got the love.
Right.
So I was angry. My mother and I didn't talk for about 3 months. And furious. So I've gone through some anger, some frustration, bad relationships. But where I am now and where I've been probably over the last 10 years is I live by a formula, especially when I was broke. When I had money, then you go back to -0. Mindset, choices, and hard work equals success. And what I mean by that is every morning I get up at 4 a.m. I'm human. There's days I want to stay in bed. I want to hit snooze, especially if my wife's snoring. I want to stay there. But then I say to myself, okay, there's someone out there right now with cancer in a hospital that's never going to leave that hospital. Right. They would give anything just to walk to the restroom on their own. Forget about leaving the hospital, just to walk to the restroom. Right. And I have the ultimate gift and privilege to be able to get out of bed and go achieve my dreams and goals. So I jump out of bed and I go for it. And in choices, it really comes down to what do you want to do? And as simple as this. Many people won't admit this. I love McDonald's. I'll own it. Yeah. On the way to the gym, I got to pass McDonald's. Yeah. Here's the choice. Do you go to the gym? Do you stop at McDonald's? It's that simple in life. So mindset, choices, hard work. Well, for me, that's easy. Patrick, you work 24, I'm going 25. Yeah, you do 36, I'm going 37. Yeah. And then equals success. And a lot of people push back and, oh, well, JT, it's not that easy. In my opinion, it is. Yeah. And opportunity is everywhere. A lot of people don't know this. In-N-Out Burger has managers who make $160,000 a year that started cleaning the toilets. We live in a society now, not everyone, but so many people don't want to work for it. So many people want that instant gratification. No one wants to put in the time, the effort, the grind, the hustle, the extra hours to achieve their goals. So many people are victims. I can't change what happened to me. It's in the past. So to answer your question, all of those things, as traumatic as they were, as bad as they were, I can't change the past. No matter how much I sit here and think about it, no matter how much I sit here and dwell on it, and I can be angry, I can be mad, I can't change it. So my attitude is, I can change the next hour. I can change the next day. So I'm going to focus on those things because I can't do anything about that.
So yeah, because the choice, I guess, it sounds like either you could be a victim of your past and a victim of your circumstances, or you can create a future.
Yes.
And so it's literally, because you talked about it as choices, mindset, choices, right? So it's as simple and probably as hard as making that choice.
Yes, make the choice. Yeah. I choose not to be a victim. I choose not to dwell on the past. I have the mindset that I can go out and learn almost anything. I mentioned this to you before. I'm fortunate that I've, my adult career, when the internet came on the scene, and everything that you ever want to know is on the internet. Right. And so for me, that's helped me immensely in trading stocks. I would say 65% of my net worth in life has come from trading stocks. And it was all just self-taught from I'm still blown away that you can study a publicly traded company and they have their quarterly earnings on there, or you can listen to the earnings call, you can study their annual report, all these things. I'm like, okay, this is like legalized drug dealing.
So when you're trading, and are you doing like more long-term investing, or are you like, trading short-term?
I'm not a day trader. I have a rule for me personally, and again, no one ever taught me the rules. So there's been times, Patrick, where I've had 90% of my net worth in one trade. No one ever said that you're not supposed to do that. So I have a rule that if I make a trade, I have to be willing to hold it for at least 12 months. Now, I may exit early if I hit the numbers and what I want to make out of the trade, but I have a rule that a lot of times I get to the party early. And what I mean by that is if I foresee something that's going to happen, it may take 12 months for that to happen. So my rule is if you're going to get into the trade, you have to stay in it at least 12 months.
So now let's say that somebody who's worked a lot of years, I've accumulated some money, I don't see retirement really as an option because I'll start burning through that capital and I don't know how long I'm going to live and I want to leave some for my kids, etc. So do you feel like the stock market is a place to be able to take that money and have it grow? In other words, do you feel like you have this unique and special gift? Do you feel like you just put the time in to really learn how to do this?
There's zero, I struggle to say this. I don't believe there's anything special about what I do, especially given where I come from. Now, I've got those around me, Tucker, Zach, our tribe of people who continuously tell me, like, JT, no, there's kind of something special about you. And I struggle just because of my background. But I will say most of what I know and what I've done has just been a commitment to putting in the time and effort. Even now, I love golf, but I haven't played in 2.5 years because I've got little ones. And so you have to make a decision. 4.5, 5 hours on the golf course, time with family. And so my life comes down to God, health, family, investing, and the business. And those are the things that I focus on. So much so that I disconnected from our DirecTV. I took ESPN off. I love college football. I love NFL, but it's not progressing me to where I want to go. So I don't have it on the TV. And answering your question in a long-winded fashion, but I believe people can accomplish what they want to, but you have to put in the time and effort. This didn't just happen for me overnight. I've been doing this for years and studying. I went 5 years one time where I didn't even buy a new pair of underwear. No t-shirts, no socks, nothing. I bought nothing new. Every dime, and I mean every dime, I would put into trading. And so for me, I do believe that anyone can learn what I do. There's nothing special about it. You need to put in the time, you need to put in the effort, and be willing to sacrifice. Unfortunately, you know this, we live in a country where people don't want to sacrifice.
Yeah, and that's what I keep hearing is that you're willing to, severe discipline, and like you said, it's choices.
Yeah.
Do I want to watch NFL football or do I want to go make more money?
Exactly.
And sometimes I think you're exactly right. People feel like, well, no, I don't want to give up these other things to go, create more wealth for myself.
Right.
And the consequence of which is then they stay in mediocrity or in a place that they don't feel fulfilled in.
But here's the damnedest thing. Then they have the audacity to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
Think of this. This is how bad some of the pieces of our society are. And I've gone on this rant before. People will stand in line overnight, 24 hours, for the new iPhone.
Right.
That does 2 new things that the phone you already have does.
Right.
We as a society have the audacity to celebrate and have cameras on site for the first person that walks out with a new iPhone. When's the last time you've heard anybody all night study their financial future?
Right.
When's the last time, you hear this one, blown away by this, binge watching. It's become a term.
Yeah.
What'd you do this weekend? Oh, Friday night we started watching Game of Thrones season 1, and we went through season 38 by Sunday, never left, ordered pizza, didn't move the couch. When's the last time someone said they binge studied their financial future? Never. But like you said, then people want to complain.
And they want it to magically appear.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so how come I'm not making out? But it's like because you've been watching Game of Thrones.
Right.
Yeah.
So while you're binge watching Game of Thrones, I'm sitting there studying some company's quarterly earnings, their annual report, trying to figure out, okay, why is this stock doing this? Okay, why did these 3 executives just leave? Oh, you filed bankruptcy, but you've got $4 billion on the books in cash. You're not really bankrupt. You're doing something else that's going on. But you're watching Game of Thrones, which does absolutely nothing for you but entertain you. Great. And if that's what
To
you
distract
want,
you from
right.
life. Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
If you want to binge, but don't complain about what you don't have afterwards.
Right. Your current net worth, how much of that comes from your stock trading activities versus other business activities?
65% of my net worth comes from stock trading, and the rest has come from obviously salaries and bonuses and things of that nature. But the great majority of my net worth is from stock trading.
And you're trading your own money, not other.
My own money.
Yeah. Wow. So now you're up against, pros. People who literally, big banks, institutions, et cetera, because, they're studying the same stuff you're
Right.
studying. So what do you think gives you the ability to compete with those people?
I do my best not to compare myself to the guy that's got the Harvard MBA that works at Goldman Sachs. I've always been intrigued, and I always thought, man, I'd love to work at Goldman.
Yeah.
But I just do what works for me. And my philosophy is, what's the story? And you heard me mention this a minute ago. I'll give you one of my favorite trades I ever made. When American Airlines filed bankruptcy, I thought, oh man, again, I'm 46 years old. I remember Eastern Airlines, Pan Am, TWA. I remember those airlines going out of business. And then I thought, okay, here's American filing bankruptcy. And I was blown away by it. But then I saw they had $4 billion on the books. Like, nobody files bankruptcy if you have $4 billion. And come to find out, there was a multitude of reasons why. There were the pilot, the union contracts. There were the flight attendants. I didn't even know the baggage handlers had a union, and they were there as well. Stock went down to about 25 cents. And I said to myself, $4 billion, no one files bankruptcy for that. So I bought stock at 35 cents. Shortly thereafter, they got approval to buy new jets. And I was like, see, no one's filing bankruptcy here. You all are trying to do some restructuring, but you're not filing bankruptcy. You're not going out of business. And so my goal was to go from 35 cents to $1, and I was going to get out. When they got approval to buy the jets, the stock went up to a little over $1. And I said, okay, I'm going to hold this. Then word started coming out of a possible merger with them and U.S. Airways. Stock went to 3, stock went to 5. So long story short, I sold all the stock at about 13 and change.
Wow.
Yeah.
From 35 cents.
From 35 cents.
That's the one to talk about for sure.
Yeah. and so for me, I want to know what's the story. Now, I'll give you another one. My favorite short of all time was GoPro. I could not understand the business model. I knew it was the hotness. Everybody had a GoPro camera, but it was a one-trick wonder. All you had was a camera. Right. How often does someone need to go buy a new camera? My wife and I even went in. She hates when I do stuff like this. I went in and went and bought one. So I just wanted to see what was the hype. We didn't particularly care for it, took it back. And so right around $71, I shorted the stock. And people thought I was a fool. They said, oh, you're dumb, you're dumb. Well, stock kept going up. Somewhere between 80 and 81, the stock took a turn and started dropping. If you go look at GoPro right now, it's sitting somewhere at like 5 and change. It's been as low as 4. And there's even talk that they've sought out Chase to find a buyer for them. And the story for me, though, was you only do one thing. Right. There's no reoccurring revenue. There's no, how often does someone need to buy a new camera? So it just, I call it common sense. What's the story? And that's how I look at trading.
Do you think that other people can learn trading? Like, so if I'm if I'm the person that says, I'm working, I'm creating salary, I can allocate some of this, and I can go into the market. Is it something you'd recommend for someone who's looking for a way to expand their wealth, or do you think that there's some unique attributes that most people don't possess?
I don't believe that there's any unique. Here's the unique attribute: the willingness to save and the willingness to sacrifice.
Right.
That is the unique attribute in our country right now. Most people spend everything they make.
Right.
If you live right now in a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, and then you get a raise, say you're making $75,000, then you get a raise to $100,000. Almost immediately, our country has to go out now and go from the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage. Well, hell, we got to get the 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 3-car garage. And that's the society we live in. And so no one is willing to go from $75,000 to $100,000, live the same lifestyle, and take all that extra money, even if it's in a mutual fund.
Right.
Here's what's real funny to me, Patrick. 401ks. You'll speak to some people and you'll say, "Hey, do you invest in your 401k?" Every now and then you get that person that feels good and they're like, "Yeah, put in money every month." Great, nice. What fund are you in? Oh, they don't know.
Right.
And every now and then you'll have someone that'll say, "Oh, I'm in a small cap, whatever." Oh, nice. What are the top 10 holdings? Oh. So you have people putting money into a 401k that have no clue what the money's even going to. They don't know how long the person who's been running the fund has been running the fund. They don't know the top 10 holdings. They just know they're putting money into something. Again, let's go back. Who's been studying their 401k on the weekend?
Right.
Who's taking the time to realize, oh, I'm in this fund, top 10 holdings are ExxonMobil, Apple, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, Patrick's been running this fund since 1997. Returns since inception are 13%. Fund's been around since 97, 2008. Who's doing that homework? Very few people.
So one of the most important categories of life is their financial and wealth accumulation, yet almost no attention paid to it.
Exactly.
It's kind of absurd.
So I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off when I say this, but I'm willing to. When I was in the mortgage industry, what I found amazing was when everything blew up, you had our society pissed at the banks. Goldman, all of them, Lehman, Washington Mutual, they did this, they did this. Last time I checked, no one made you sign the documents. So as much as I do blame banks for their piece, I believe it's a dead set 50-50 split.
Right.
The banks were wrong for some of the things they were doing. They knew what was happening, and people were signing on to loans that they knew they had no business signing up for. Right. But no one talks about the personal accountability over here on this side. It's let's blame the big banks. You are ultimately buying something that for many people will be the biggest purchase they ever make, and you're not going to take the time to understand what you're signing. You're going to blame the bank for that? No.
Yeah. Interesting. It all comes down to self-responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, doesn't it?
And to your point, you asked me, personal accountability. I am personally accountable for, am I going to be a victim or am I going to move forward? And that's where it starts for me. I can dwell and ask myself all the time, why was I born to a pimp father and an orphaned mother? Why did I go through the things that I went through? But I can ask why all day. Doesn't change anything. But man, I can go study quarterly earnings and make some cash.
So, and here's another thing I think, and it goes to mindset, that you went from basically rags to really growing in a career, accumulating some money, and then you crashed again.
Yeah.
How was that psychology? Is that devastating to
You know, it sucked.
Yeah, like what goes through your mind?
It wasn't devastating. Here's why. Here's something that I can't imagine. Imagine if you were born into a family of wealth and you've always had wealth, and now you're 40 years old, and for whatever reason, your wealth is wiped out, and now you don't have any. Man, I cannot imagine what goes through that person's mind. I came from being broke. I knew what being broke felt like. So I was very familiar with it. And it sucked. And yes, I had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations with myself of how could you do this? You were a lottery winner. You made all this money only to blow it all and not have any. But I knew, okay, I made it once, I can do it again. And that's my mentality. Did it once, I'll do it again. Now I'll never go back to doing that again.
You learned something.
It wasn't devastating for me. It sucked. Obviously, I didn't like it. I will say it was a huge character builder for me, because what I was able to do was look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, I had all this money. Now this money's gone. What am I left with? What's my character? Who am I as a person? What do I want to be going forward? Do I just want to dwell on, oh, I lost all this money? The money didn't define me. It was a real moment for me to realize, man, I can't even hold a relationship. I'm incredibly disrespectful to women. I've been a monster in relationships. What's the character I want to be? And that's what became the building of really, I guess, me, part two.
If you've got some ambitious young people out there that are saying, hey, I want to go, carve out my place in the world and make it happen, anything you'd say to them? What advice would you give?
Mindset, choices, hard work equals success. And on top of that, I would say, find out what is it you want to do and just dive 100% into it. It's interesting. Some people will still email me, reach out to LinkedIn, and those who put time into the question they're asking me or what it is they're wanting, I'll actually email back, say, hey, let's schedule a 30-minute call. And because if you've put time into it, I remember being the person who was once asking the questions, once wanting the feedback. So I would say, find out what it is you want to do. Do you want to work at Goldman Sachs? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to run a nonprofit? There's nothing wrong with that. What is it that you want to do, and put every ounce of energy into it? And for those young people who are wanting what I call extreme success, and success isn't defined by financials. They want to be clear on that. It's not by financials alone. For me, it was because of the way I grew up. But if you want extreme success in whatever it is you do, success comes with sacrifice. So don't walk around yelling work-life balance, because there is none if you want extreme success. Now, you may find some after you achieve a certain level of success, then you can start to dabble in a little work-life balance. But when you're on the grind, the hustle to achieve that extreme success, you need to go ahead and put work-life balance on the shelf. Be willing to sacrifice. Be willing to work a Saturday or Sunday. Be willing to work till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And don't complain about it. Realize that's how you're going to get there.
Any final thoughts for the people out there who really want to figure out how to get financially independent and create wealth and preserve wealth and grow wealth?
I'd say similar to what we just talked about right there. If you want to understand the stock market, I'll give you a great example. A friend of mine, he goes, okay, teach me some things. So we're watching CNBC. And he goes, man, what does all that stuff under there on that chart mean? It said JJASO. And he goes, what is all that? I go, June, July, August, September. And he goes, you're kidding me. I go, no, it's not as hard as people think it is. But it's not all going to come to you at once either. You have to put in some time. I wake up, literally, the TV turns on, set to alarm, CNBC or Bloomberg. That's how I wake up. I have found an immense love in business and in investing. That's where I dedicate my time. business, investing in my family. And so dig deep, do the research, study, and realize it's not going to happen overnight.
Well, JT, your story is incredible. It's very inspiring, and I really appreciate you sharing it with us here. And I look forward to reading your book.
My man Patrick, I appreciate it. I thank you much. Very humbled and flattered to sit here, and I'm still amazed people actually want to hear this.
Trust me, they do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
To see the next episode in the Money Revealed series, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Investing on the stock market, when women actually do start investing, they are better investors than men.